Well, a little confusion does everyone some good here. So we've come back and we understand that you are in a bit of an insurrection here about our delivery and clarity about the post-nano world, the great changeover, and all the things. And so we'll go over that. But here's the good thing. We are meeting on a Sunday afternoon, out of the pattern, but a new winter sort of kind of thing. And in the new era, everything's a little bit different. So that is really good. Very, very good. All right, so moving on, we will recapitulate for you. The nanosecond, which ended on the winter solstice of 2012, terminated basically at that point. That is what we call the point of critical change. And that is because the sun was in alignment with the cross that was formed by the plane of the galaxy and the ecliptic. And as the sun was in alignment with it, it was also in alignment with the bulge in the galactic center, and boom, lots of creativity. As we said, the Mayans started their calendar with the ending date because they saw that as the pivotal market point of change. So, for simplicity, we will say that the new era begins on January number 1. You could say it starts the next day after the solstice. But to make it really easy, 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017. These 5 years comprise what we call the first phase of the post-nano world. 5 years. Just as you had the last 5 years of the nano world. And just think, you're bridging over 5 years. The last 5 years of the nano, big 100,000-fold acceleration. First 5 years of post-nano, this is a deceleration. It's not a massive deceleration that would counterbalance this optimum velocity. It is a lumpy deceleration. How is that?
Like peanut butter or get on bread?
or a double-humped camel. That kind of thing. Yes, the lumpy peanut butter. So that there will be some bumps and drops, and then things may smooth off, and then bumps and drops. So a lumpy deceleration. And then the second phase begins in 2018. And this phase lasts 10 years. And this is phase 2, second phase, 10 years, 2018 to 2027. This period will be characterized by lots of big transformations, new ideologies, new realizations, incorporating all that is necessary to be understood, the change, again, to change things. Now, Phase 1 and Phase 2, 5 years and 10 years equals 15 years. 15 years is the changeover period. 2 phases within those 15 years. But those 15 years are the pivotal time of all of the changes. And so the first phase, deceleration, lots of things falling apart, lots of huge adjustments, and this is where some of the super changes are going to happen. This is attributed to some of the Uranus-Pluto squares that are occurring and have yet to occur. This is attributed to the Saturn-Scorpio transit and then Sagittarius transit. This is attributed to, let's say, the need to create a greater purification, to get rid of all things that will hamper the building of a new era. So one could say the critical point of change, which is the end of the nano, sets the stage for the changeover era, 15 years. That's the changeover. meaning that there'll be hesitations, there'll be battles, there'll be people dramatically changing over, making huge changes over. Others are saying, I'm stubborn, I'm not moving, clashes, confrontations, exposés, earth changes, financial meltdowns, supply shortages, food challenges. That's phase 1, 13 to 17. By 18, some of the tumult, the real tumult, is over, and this is when the new discoveries, the new ideologies, the new considerations start to become part of society, put into law, put into, these are the paradigm-busting years, when, let's say, discoveries are really implemented and no longer speculated. Back to the first phase, we believe, if things stay on course, the first phase is when the ET recognition comes through, and as we have said, the public is being long conditioned for this, especially now with Curiosity rover up there. And so then the third phase, it starts in 2028, and the third phase is open-ended. There is no end to it. All right? Mm-hmm. So it simply acknowledges the third phase, that here something really takes hold. And we are saying that each of those years are characteristically different. Yet by 2028, the planets shift, and that we see as the real, true beginning of the new era. We see the 15 years prior to that, the changeover era, preparing for the new era. You follow? Mm-hmm. Even though technically you are in the new era, January 1st. If you've got all that, you get a gold star.
This is Nan.
Yes, Nan.
Well,
do you like all these names and dates and markers? They're just markers to help your mind understand things.
Right. Well, it made me think of how it probably was when the industrial age kicked in, say, all over the world. That it was prior to that, everything was agriculture, or it wasn't really factory type of things, and that must have been a big transition for humankind, I guess.
Well, certainly it was, and many people attribute the birth of the Industrial Revolution in the area that our vehicle is often visited around Shrewsbury in England. But again, it's another example of what we said earlier. Sometimes events are just events. They occur. And it is not until the passage of time that they are deemed historically significant. So one could say that the aftermath of the Pluto coming to the galactic center, 1760s, that is when the Industrial Revolution quickened. And again, any contacts to the galactic center are always connected in some capacity to the development of consciousness, to boost it, to stimulate, to trigger it, to sometimes fire it or jumpstart it. Now, just because consciousness is jump-started, fired, triggered, boosted, and sautéed, doesn't mean it's going to, all of it's going to do something. It's getting consciousness to other levels is like going on a roundup, and all of you have seen them or been on them yourselves along the lines of time, or you've been sheep herders or goat herders, or you've had to run the herds of camels or horses or steers, you understand? Mm-hmm. And they can go all over the place, and if you don't know what you're doing, you can't do anything with them. And it is like directing the mass mind, and really good herders, whether they are dogs or whether they are horses and people. And even pigs have been used. Remember Babe? Babe was used. Yes, Babe could round up the sheep. So there is a meeting of the minds. And there's a multidimensional link that happens beyond linear time. Another way of understanding to simplify an understanding of multidimensionality is to think of it as the next step from linear. Linear implies sequential and isolation. Multidimensional implies lots of moving in all directions. Ways of thinking of things. And that is why we are giving you these descriptors for the post-nano world. We feel our listening and reading audience would be greatly disappointed if we did not keep up our creativity and our maps. You have to recognize that we made a little dent in society with the nanosecond and the way we mapped it out, and you need the same thing. This is how you navigate. This is how you move from here to there. As long as you don't believe it is gospel, you will do fine. Invest too much in it, you are in trouble. You follow? All right, so did that clarify the sequences of what we are explaining? So most often we will be speaking of the changeover era, which covers phase 1 and phase 2, 15 years. And then when we say, oh, when the new era really begins, that's phase 3 or 2028 and thereon. And there's some interesting markers there that happen. Ooh, some very interesting markers. Because then you start to really, really build a new society. One of the things that will happen end of phase 1, early phase 2, which puts us at about 2020 or thereabouts, there will be such a rise in healers and such an anecdotal dose and presence of people having the Spirit move through them. Some call it God, some call it the field, some call it divine intelligence, chi, prana. No matter what you call it, it is an intelligent energy. And it is part of the gift of clearing the way for the new era. And it will help people who will find themselves in huge, huge, unexpected, consequential situations. It does not look to us as if the governmental solutions of healthcare are going to make much of a dent, particularly in North America. And of course you have how many other continents that are dealing with the same energies, the same type of crisis. And we'll say this, that the first phase of the post-nano era is challenging because things happen very, very quickly. And not only is this a time of deceleration, it is a time of dismantling. And so you can already see that there's all manner of let's say, horns and whistles and trombones being blown over the lack of dealing with the deficit and the budget and all of these things. And there's these debates over, can you keep borrowing and spending to make everyone into an entitled society? Well, as has been reported from many different angles, it was decades ago that the Illuminats decided to dismantle the power of the middle class and the growing awareness of society. After World War II, things rebounded and lots of boomers came in. Lots of people who died in World War I and II were reborn after the war. If you were born in the 40s or 50s, more than likely you were a returnee from the 40s, 30s, 20s, teens, and even back to the Civil War. You follow? Mm-hmm. That period, Civil War to about the 1945, saw a tremendous amount of turnaround. Some beings turned around many times. But there was, after the war, even though it was a globalist plan, you came into the countdown to the nano, the end of that era. And so there was opportunity bustling and all kinds of things. So to understand that at the same time, this is when beings started to manipulate society and they wanted to halt and stop your progress. So this was the implementation of programs that were designed to, from one point of view, dismantle the stability of society. Now, in modern era, last few millennia, and before, you have derived your stability from what? Who knows? What is the institution that allows society to thrive?
Commerce. Commerce.
Commerce?
Mm-hmm.
We would say it is the institution of marriage.
Marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Without marriage, well, some of you are unmarried people. Some of you know unmarried people. You've been to places where the unmarrieds are, or the never marrieds. You have the freedom, as we've often said, to be unmarried without children and unburdened in this particular lifetime, and to be able to live long and afford to do it. But what kept society together was marriage and family. You follow? Mm-hmm. And if not everyone in the family got married, they stuck with the family. Someone had to play man and woman, husband and wife, mother and father, and reproduce. There was not a lot of room for harlots and experimentation sexually. There was no such thing as changing your gender identity. Do you follow?
Mm-hmm.
So from after the war, there were great intentions to promote lifestyles that were known to disrupt the continuity of society. In that way, the globalists felt that they could gain control, that society would not be stronger than they, and they encouraged all manner of pleasure and hedonism and the breaking of every rule that held society together. Now, we certainly do not and will not and ever blame the globalists for setting these sort of things into motion. They, like all people, play parts. But this is part of the problem that people face. And what happens in phase one of the post-nano world is that people start to realize they are not connected, that everything is connected. But many people start to long to come back to the roots, to have family, to have stability, to have, you understand what we are saying?
Yes.
By phase two, it is very strong. And phase one, because of dismantlings and shocking, what we are calling super changes and some big financial shocks and earth shakings and things, people become very confused. And they feel the need to claim something back. They also, in other words, the pendulum swings in another direction. And some of the more radical, let's say, fringe aspects of society are seen as superfluous, unnecessary, insulting to some of the difficulties that people are dealing with. In other words, there's more of a starkness to reality because more people will be affected by financial disasters and big chaos. And so there's not a lot of room to sort of party-hardy and be wild. You follow?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has to bring it in. Everyone will have to pitch in. You follow?
Yes.
That's phase one. That's phase one. Ask us a question, if you will, or ask for erudition on anything we are saying.
This is Karen.
Yes,
I think
Karen.
that longing to connect would then bring back people to the sacred way.
Yes,
because
perfect,
You need groups,
perfect.
or you want to have groups that are working together. The energy is more powerful, and then people start realizing, oh, look what we can create in a unified group.
What will bring them back to all of this is yes, they will come back to the sacred way because they will want stability. Now, in the midst of all this, the normal course of affairs, if you want to call it normal, let's say the normal manipulated course of affairs, over the last 2,000 years is to, when things go all whizzy-bangy, to herd people into the churches, yes?
Yes.
Yeah.
However, since Pluto's frisky transit through Sagittarius.
Serious.
It really, really ripped out any credibility that the Catholic Church has had. Ooh, many still are true believers. They still want to believe in something, so they won't see the holes in the story. And there's more holes than there are cheese, really. That's all right. It just shows you the power of the mind to believe. You understand?
Yeah.
Always remember that.
Yes.
These people, you may not believe the same thing, but you must admire their power to believe. Now, even if it is in holes. So, the presence and the recognition of intelligence within the cosmos. On Earth, out there, dimensionally, ET beings, it's going to be a huge PR job to sell religion and to sort of cut and paste ETs in. Do you follow? It is a deal breaker. And already, all over, churches are closing. There has been a huge abandonment of many churches. Now, in the South, there's a little more passion and fervor. No offense, the South is always a bit behind the times. They are not at the head of the pack. They are the last ones to figure out that they are behind. You follow this?
Yeah.
Yes.
So here they may be building churches, while other places they're dismantling them, selling them, closing them down. People do not like the rules. They are in conflict about being and supporting an organization who has some of the truth and who gets the dates right, often on the seasons and things, who still promotes people as being sinners that needs to be saved, while their ranks seem to be extraordinarily forgiving of their own sinners who have sinned heinously in terms of destroying people's lives sexually. Do you follow this?
Yeah.
So all of this does not make for, let's say, sweet dreams at night and sugar plums. It creates chakra conflict. It creates timeline conflict. It creates pocketbook conflict in a time that people have less money and they're not throwing it around. You follow this?
Yeah.
One could say this again is the superlative workings of the multiverse. Attempting to, or orchestrating dismantlings in order to create and build new structures.
Right.
And how could people be ready for new ideas unless they were already decided, I'm tired of this, I'm finished with this wears me out, it's conflicting, it doesn't make sense, I'm putting it aside. You follow? Are they ripe for something new? Yes.
This is Nan.
Yes, Nan.
Well, my brother-in-law was a Baptist minister who, for years and years.
Brother-in-law, Baptist minister.
Yes, and
didn't you say he switched at one time to something else?
Well, they just did. He got fed up with the church system because there was huge, especially in the South, a huge amount of prejudice against other people of color, and then there was the money thing, and it's like I felt like him and my sister are both Capricorns, believe it or not, and they both have a real spiritual naivete which they express through the Baptist religion. So now, yes,
we call it more faith than smarts.
Yeah, I guess that's.
Do you
what
follow
it is.
It's more the desire to believe than there is the desire to question what one believes.
Right.
Go for it.
So they have dropped out of that, and they've joined, I don't know what church they've joined, but it's just, to me, that was a major wake-up call, because many Baptist people would never even think about, and Catholic too, just like you said, never even think about leaving their religion, no matter what type of things are taking place in the upper ranks.
Oh, it's happening though. Now, granted that the Catholics, who have huge numbers, their paradigm needed to be busted because it was quite heinous. The next paradigm that needs to be busted is, let's say, the ranks that's already working in India. The tragic events there that paralleled, one girl took it on, and her companion took on the woes of a nation 1 billion people. One girl took this on. In terms of being raped, being ridden around in a bus in India, in the New Delhi area, being ridden around and being raped so poorly, badly, that her intestines were damaged and she died 10, 15 days later, some such. Now, the Indians are Muslim, they are Hindu, they are famous for strife. They are famous for, remember, when you are in Purdah, who remembers what Purdah is? Timeliners. That is the seclusion of the woman. And when she is in Purdah, and if the husband is deceased, no matter the age of the woman, and some of these husbands had hundreds of wives, they all had to go to the fire pyre with him. You follow this? Mm-hmm. Read the book Fire Pavilions if you want a wonderful MMK, absolutely top-notch, let's say, chakra rocker of a story that takes you into India and the depths of the time of these values. So one girl takes on the nation. Yes, she dies. But the nation will never be the same. Mm-hmm. And what is coming out is that abuse of women in the family of Indian people is normal. And that uncles, cousins, everyone is to keep their mouth shut. Do you understand?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes,
it's just India, that whole area.
We are saying yes. So that this is India that takes this on. Yeah. Then you have the Muslim issue, the Middle East. What are their issues? What paradigm must be busted, cracked wide open for them? It is the homosexual issue. It is absolutely verboten in society. They will kill homosexuals. They will castrate them. They will destroy them. But they are secret practitioners of abusing young boys, and they grow up like this in the culture, and they abuse the young girls too. No one says a word. It is forbidden to say a word, just like the Irish. Abused for decades by the priests, by the nuns, by the convents, by the churches. Zip it, not a word. And if someone said that they were ostracized or a curse was put on them. So these are, as you watch these beliefs, these stories, these practices, there's a lot of energy that people put in things, they don't question it. So you will see more of these real paradigm-breaking realities that are preparing people for looking at things from a much larger perspective. During the changeover time, there'll be lots of experimentation. Now, those of you who are grounded and clear, know what you want, things will move forward. You will make very good long-term decisions. You won't feel the pressure to get something done. It's the nano. You will recognize it's the new era. How do I want to live? You will have longer distance vision. How is that? It was difficult in the nano to have long distance vision. You weren't meant to, do you understand? Because it wasn't about seeing, it was about dealing with juggling a lot of balls in the air and applying all that you were learning. The nano was a time of demonstrating what you were capable of. It was really a push. This is more about joining the wagon train, getting the wagon, filling it up with supplies, and headed out to resettle, to rebuild, to relocate. Do you follow?
In a new consciousness.
With a new consciousness. Some people will never move, but they will move in other ways. Lots of people will move, and we will say that on the dire end of some of the things that happen during especially the phase 1, 13 to 17 years there, 2013 to 2017, there could be more situations such as you had from the superstorm Sandy in terms of big destruction, especially at coastal regions, and not so that the continents crack in half or anything, but it's big destruction because you have such a density of population. And so if all this sort of tumult were to go to the shores of Greenland, big deal, do you understand? And again, some of these storms are targeted and directed, and you must factor in there's some connection. Superstorm Sandy, Sandy Hook, and George was pointing out back to the Connecticut issue that the United Way, which pans for pennies or dimes or something, that's the March of Dimes, but they're always panhandling for money to help out the public somehow. They put up a condolence bulletin to the people of Newtown, Connecticut, days before the event occurred. Is that correct, George?
Yes, and the main point of the bulletin was to offer the condolences.
And to solicit donations?
To solicit donations.
Of course.
This is where you send the donation.
Yes, because they all want money.
3 days before the event.
3 days before the event. So that's pretty sleazy, if you ask us. And here's the thing. When events are obviously orchestrated and they have an occult agenda, occult is very scorpionic. It means technically what? Hidden, yes? So when events have a hidden agenda, meaning, and they have an occult side, that's another aspect of the occult, which is working with dark magic in a methodical way, through numbers, through dates, through specific rituals, and doing things repeatedly to build energy to create something. And Sandy Hook obviously falls into that category, most obviously. And again, as we pointed out last class, it was also home of the woman who wrote The Hunger Games, where 23 children were, in her book, sacrificed every year. Who else has a comment?
Well, this is Sue,
Yes, Sue.
Also with the Sandy Hook, and we were talking about it during recess, how they had actors doing the interviews. They weren't even the real family.
So they had actors taking on the role of family members, pretending to cry. Yes. In other words, Karen M. also heard that the crime scene was so protected that bodies stayed there for days. And they wouldn't let anyone in. No one will still talk about it. No one, and everyone is traumatized. And the counselors went in and got everyone very quickly. With the counselors come the meds. Do you understand? With the counselors and meds come the lockdown. And then you say, well, if there's 1,000 people on the scene, locking this down, distributing, doing this and doing that, there's more than 1,000, but let's just say out of 1,000, how many would really know what's going on? Few. And those few may not know each other. Only 2 may know each other. You understand? It's not like there's 10 who know each other. And they would all stand there together. It's all compartmentalized. And each person may know a tidbit. There may be out of 1,000 people, there may be 10 who know quite a bit, and there may be 50 who belong to clubs, and they do nothing but follow instruction. They don't question, they don't think. You follow? So that they can. And they have authority. They have authority. They are the chiefs. They have this. They have this. They are head investigators. They are heads of things. And they have many working under them. And if someone is too eager-beager and too smart, guess what? Accidents happen, transfers, things of this nature. On this kind of thing, you would bet that it is a complete lockdown in terms of who gets access to information. And it's quite evident that there's been very few leaks into the media. It's a controlled event. Do you understand this? You don't even have a story of how it actually happened. No one's talking, are they?
No.
And you know what? After a while, they won't be talking because they won't remember.
No, because Kim Kardashian got pregnant.
Yes. Yes. And she's going to have the $1 billion baby. To heck with the $1 million babies. This is now $1 billion baby. And yes, and the royals are pregnant, and so all these things get overshadowed. And not to diminish people having their babies. Babies come in, you need to. It's a library. It's a sexual operation here, and good thing it is. Good thing it is. You come for the sex. You come for the sex, the food, the love. We've always said that, and the adventures. All right, so getting some pictures here about reality.
Peace.
Yes, Karen.
Karen, kind of continuing on this line, the violence and all. Yesterday, Marty and I were headed down to the coast to go to a wedding in New Bern, and when we were driving there and got closer, I noticed there was a sign that there was going to be a gun and knife show in that town that day, and so. Later on, that after the wedding was over, we were in the bar of the place where they had it, and the news happened to be on, and they were commenting and exclaiming, showing that there were blocks of people lined up waiting to get into this armory at the gun show.
To buy, not to trade in.
Right.
I saw the picture. They panned the blocks of people waiting.
Wow.
So
what happens is basically what does that represent?
Insanity.
well, you're splitting. The splitting.
But if you get it down to a feeling, what's going on? Fear. Perfect. That's what's happening. Is that this is fear in line.
Yeah.
And what's in line are those who have come to believe that only through defending themselves can they possibly survive or be okay. You follow this?
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
Yes. That's that because you can judge them. We can judge them too. They are having to do what they have to do. But when we step back and we say, what are they really doing? They are demonstrating that they are in fear and they want to do something to alleviate that feeling of fear that they have. And so having a weapon allows them to feel more secure and more safe and probably less in fear at the front of their being. You follow? Mm-hmm. Now, to have a collection of guns and knives and things of this nature, you can say, well, they're for hunting. Well, it isn't the 1800s or it isn't 1940s, do you understand? And even in the 50s, yes. And Jed and Clampett came down in the 60s from the Beverly Hills. And so we understand, even there's parts in the hollows now where they still want to hunt. But even hunting, it was always considered to be sportsmanship. And the highest of hunters hunted only to eat, not to trophy hunt, not to kick their gonads in, or to blast off some kind of endocrine testosterone, anxiety-driven hormones. The idea was to kill animals with grace, with dignity, with sorrow and joy. Sorrow that a life is ended, and grace given, because life will continue. Do you follow this? Mm-hmm. And it was always to be done so that the least pain, the most dignity. This is the ultimate of a sportsman. And a real sportsman does not want to hurt an animal. Then you have the element of what you call them lower vibrations that have invaded the planet over the last 50, 60 years. Those who just want to do anything to explode and explore because they get a kick out of it. They're not connected to anything. And then you have many who are literally in fear. So these are the splittings, yes. And then you would be very surprised if there was a way that the cameras could pan all the people who would line up to say, I need no protection. Mm. And they would be the Taoists and the meditators and the Kung Fus and the Qigongers, and you would be amazed at their numbers. And But then there would be the element in between, the predators, who would say, now we know who to predatize. You follow this?
Yeah.
If that is a word. So, it is important that these people have to act on how they feel. You cannot force someone to feel safe. Moving beyond the need to destroy something to protect yourself or to destroy something to get what you want. It's a stage of development. The Mayan long count calendar, as are other points of the various Mayan calendars, the Mayans were basically tracking the various developmental stages of consciousness. The Mayans could see ahead to some extent, they could see into the past, but they still had a difficult time telling where they were themselves in the evolutionary cycle. You follow?
Yeah.
Just as you have difficulty in telling, you compare yourselves, but when you compare, you are comparing to reenactments or someone's edited history books. It's not as if you all jump back to 1776 and sit in a tavern and say, "Ooh, look how low her décollage is cut, or how her breasts are jiggling when she carries those heavy tankards of beer. Is this where Huta started or some such?" Do you understand? But it's all speculation unless you can go there. And there are some people who can go there. We're glad you are laughing. This is part of the...
Good visuals.
We are keeping our end of the bargain up here today by keeping you entertained. And as we said early on, we would meander into various themes and do a little here and a little there, but it will all be very much tied together to give you a bigger picture. Yes, Karen?
So how did this fear energy that was generated 1 week before the solstice, and I remember the local fellow that writes a column in the News and Observer, he said, well,
came 1 week earlier.
The Mayan calendar ended 1 week early in some respects. So
yes,
how
7
did
days.
That affect the end of the nano, all this fear being dumped into?
Ooh, it was a huge effect. It's an excellent point that you are raising here. It was sort of a, let's say, boost by the old gods, the Marduk and the bloodletters, and all of that kind of dark energy out of Mesopotamia and that part of the world. It was a boost for them, sort of a smack or a slap into a splattering on all the work that the elders, the indigenous people and the regular people everywhere who were working on. And it added to the splits. It was unifying, extraordinarily unifying, in that it opened people's heart chakra. Boom. And it was splitting because it's natural to have things split at the end of the nano. We said all through the nano, as you got towards the end, you would see more and more splits and decisions. And yes, even though those decisions are about technology versus nature, here you have one about violence versus peace. You follow?
Yeah.
And that violence is made with technology, so sorry, it's not made with nature. So violence and technology go together, and the nature and the peace go together. So it sort of was, the children chose to be participating in this, to be part of a historical event at the end of the nano, pardon us, to raise the stakes to one of the biggest issues there is, the value of children and their safety, and to take on the slaughter. As we mentioned, it was pointed out that the Mayan numbers of 20 and 26 were energized in this slaughter, even though 28 people were all the total number killed. The two were discounted. The killer and his mother were out of the game in terms of numbers. It was always 20 and 26. Yeah. And again, the Mayans' numbers are 20 and 13. 2 times 13 is 26, yes. 20 times 13, 260. And that was a very sacred number for the Mayans. Do you follow what we are getting at here?
It's like a playing out of the old tradition.
It was, from them, their point of view, this was their sacrifice at the end of the Nano to feed the gods who live on blood, and to christen the new era and the end of the Nano with bloodletting and the sacrifice of innocent children, which is the purest of blood. You follow?
Yeah.
And to call in those beings. And you had a huge split and polarization. And you want to know which side is where? We'll just say it's a huge split. And we did say you'd be astounded as to how many don't want violence versus how many will go line up for these shows and be in fear. And there's a lot of money being made right now. Bigger than all the things you faced before. These next few years are really big because these people want to dismantle the USA and vie for control of this country. This is where the smarts, the wealth, everything is. If you want to take over the world, which continent, which place do you think you want?
U.S.
The US. And so there's behind the scenes clashes, huge ones. Let's say the Republicans have told to be an immovable force. The large majority of them don't know the details and don't know why. And even their big bankrollers don't know the details and don't know why. But we are talking about people, good-hearted people of all ranks and military and party affiliations, getting a picture of what's going on the inside that makes Nixon's paranoia about communists seem mild. You understand? Because there are layers of timelines and ETs and stuff, and then there's all these underground bunkers everywhere. These what you call them?
Deep underground military bases?
Yes, but they are bolt holes or places for globalists and their minions to evacuate to.
Right.
And there's been billions and billions of dollars that have been spent on this paranoia on their part, that as things go really bad on the surface, that people plan to evacuate and get down there, and all of that can go really haywire as well. And sometimes when bizarre things happen, it's really forces fighting forces. That has nothing to do with military games or anything. It has to do with real planetary survival, a kind of secret government wars. Do you understand? Yes, this is growing bigger, and this will be a pronounced part of Phase 1. Phase 1, there will be desperation on the part of the globalists to really, really implement a quick agenda of their plans, which we do not see occurring. Oh, yes, they have their prison camps, and they have this, and they have that, and their super surveillance, but we don't see them really playing that out to any great success. We see a lot of infighting, a lot of chaos, a lot of shuffling, a lot of incompetent people. We see a lot of people getting sick that have jobs that they can't perform because they are so sick to perform them. Do you follow? Mm-hmm. So we see dismantling, falling apart, and as we mentioned in the new P Times, the old P Times, it's not the new one yet, it's still the one that hasn't been mailed. And we want to say that it hasn't been mailed because it's not quite finished, and our vehicle was very, very sick for 2 months, so apologies all the way around when you hear this later on in the year. But we say that there will be questions that will arise, and it will be the 3 R's. It's not reading, writing, and arithmetic. It's rebuild, retreat, relocate. You understand?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. These will be questions that countries and people will ask themselves. Do we rebuild? Do we relocate? Or do even now we retreat from where we are because we can see what's coming? And some people will not even be able to relocate. You follow? Mm-hmm. Questions.
Peace, this is Steve.
Yes, Steve.
So, going back a little bit, you were talking about people are kind of giving up on religion.
Yes.
And it sounded like you were saying, though, that they're going to introduce the ETs or reveal the ETs as a means of getting people back into the churches.
Well, not quite so much. The church, of course, especially the Catholic Church, and we believe that our vehicle put something like this in the P Times one time, that all the major religions of the world had their own personal, private, very, very, very expensive telescopes. And that these telescopes were not something just in the Pope's bedroom or something peering out the window. These were locations in volcanoes or in mountainous areas, in the southern hemisphere in particular, where the tilting is a little bit different, and so where they can see what's coming from space. So when the presence of other forms of intelligence sort of emerges multidimensionally, yes, there's potential announcements, there's sightings, but it will be organic in the end, because it is organic. And it will be sort of not linear, but coming out all at once. And the churches certainly will want to, well, look at this. A person can be a nobody, absolutely a nobody. Walk down the street, look like a slob, zip, they're nothing. They could even smell and not brush their teeth. If they win the lottery, or if that same person suddenly finds themselves hip and cool and on a TV show and a reality show, then what happens? They can still have bad teeth and smell, but everyone wants them. Do you understand?
Yeah.
And so suddenly it shows the shallowness of the people. They all want to glom onto the latest trend. So what we are saying, Steve, is that religions, some of them, particularly the Catholic religion, will want to glom onto however this reality presents itself in whatever phenomenological forms. There may be announcements. There's all kinds of movies in the can, meaning the movies have been made. They're waiting in the tin to be shown. But there's the multidimensional aspect, and what we want to emphasize is in the new era, reality happens as a blossoming, not so much as a ruler. Understand the difference?
Yeah.
When it's
negates my next question.
When reality is a ruler, that's the linear model. So you say, well, I'm on inch 3, and behind me is inch 2 and 1, and ahead of me are the 33. When it just blossoms, it's like July in the garden. Everything's ripe at once. You follow?
Yeah.
And suddenly there's tomatoes and carrots and all the herbs and the peppers, and it's everything, the eggplant. Where linear is one at a time. Go ahead, Steve.
Okay, so does that happen during phase 1 or is that phase 2?
It happens, the linear mind's wanting this now.
And that's why I said it negates
Yes,
my next
that's all
question.
right though, but at least you know this. We teach the people on the road all the time. We say, oh, that's the P that wants to know. Remember, the P wants a list.
Yeah.
Could I have a list, please? Can I locate? That's why we make things up to help describe reality that satisfy your P. And so the greatest potential is in the phase 1, 2013 to 2017. We see it as eminent, as immediate, as a pressing thing that can no longer be hidden. Remember, it was the autumn equinox when they were battling the nests of ETs.
Right.
And then what happened to that story?
Squashed.
Well, Hillary's now front and center page for whatever they wanted to project on her. And Benghazi. And yes, Benghazi is what squashed it.
Right.
Well, actually, Benghazi had already happened. Benghazi was 9/11.
Right.
And the ET swarming supposedly were around the equinox. Yes. Yes.
Can I say, add something to this?
Yes, certainly.
You know, I know Steve always wants to know when there's going to be an announcement, but
Yes, that's his department. He's the correspondent.
they're announcing
Next
it
Thursday.
all the
I know.
time. All you have to do is look on the internet. Last week they had a photo of looked like a dolichoencephaloid head. Did anyone see that? New discovery. I don't even know where it was, but there it was. This, partial, big ET head
Right.
lying in the ground, partially,
Yeah, that was in Mexico.
Yeah.
And I think that was actually on the winter solstice.
And
Yeah.
so there,
Right on.
another week or two will go by, and then there'll be another little ditty about something. So
Yes, the
we've been
conditioning.
prepared for so long that
Yes, and still, Karen.
it will be a big shock. I know.
But people, because
Oh, because you may look at these sites, but think about how many sites you would never go on.
Well, no, that wasn't even a site. That was just
That was
on
news.
my front,
yeah.
my front page when I turn on my
In other
computer.
words, you didn't
So
have to
people-
dig to find it.
Yeah, it's like the electronic newspaper.
Well, they just discovered they said they just discovered how many planets last week?
Yeah, and
Well,
that
Earth
was
now
last
the new
week.
all
thing is
those
Earth
little
like
things.
Every week it's another 100
Right.
planets. At first, George was learning all the names of the new ones and their attributes. Forget it now, right,
Yeah.
George?
There's too many now.
Yes.
Here's my question.
Do you see, just to finish with George a minute, do you see the analogy here? At first, the planets were a ruler, yes? Here's one, here's another, 2 inches.
Right.
Now they are blossoming.
Yeah.
They are a peony.
Sure are.
They are a peony. And let's say this. Let's use the peony
yeah.
for the symbol of the new era.
Okay.
All right? Because again, this will satisfy your need to have pictures, because as that peony starts off, it's a golf ball, you understand? It's a tight little golf ball. And it doesn't look like it's going to be very much of anything. Not that it would have promise or great scent. And then what happens? The ants crawl all over it, yes?
Yes.
And what do?
I
Tickle it into opening.
They tickle it, they sing it, and they release certain pheromones, enzymes,
Yeah.
hormones that then trigger the timing of the opening of the peony. So think of, as we keep saying, multidimensional is blossoming. They are affiliated. The new era is multidimensional. It is about blossoming. Its symbol is the peony. All right. The peony, yes. And if you want to call the evening's discussion the peony, that would be interesting, because it's
Isn't the peony a very important?
Oh,
in the Chinese
yeah,
history?
in the Oriental.
it's a
Oh, yeah.
very auspicious
Very,
flower.
very
It's
auspicious.
considered to be, yes, the wealth and the highest of flowers. We would give the flower to the new era as the peony.
Great.
And when you're looking to understand how things are happening, think of it that way. And watch this spring the blossomings of the peonies.
Okay.
They're golf ball, golf ball, golf ball. Then they start softening, and then they're just there. They are velvet. They are opulent. They are dripping. They are scent-filled. You follow this?
And they have medicinal value.
Yeah, good. Look it up and find out and report next time. And if the Chinese put it at the top of their list of the most auspicious, then they do know what they are doing. Ah, so. It's good. So have we succeeded in giving you
Yes.
clearer, more practical pictures of what's going to come down?
Yes.
Yes.
Again, we are surfing the probs. We read these things. We look at the trends. We see where things are now. We factor in the potential for change. We look at the astrology and the probabilities. And still, there have been times when we have said to you, oh, it looks like this is going to happen. And it's not happened at all. Not in the probability you are in. Because things flicker and change and blink on and off, and we've held a good reputation with you because we've called some things pretty close, and so we'll do our best to be this way in the post-nano world. Things are slower, so there's not as much happening after a while. Do you understand this?
Yeah. There's a lot of processing to do from the end of the nano.
Nan, you said the word there. There's a lot of processing to do in terms of what the nano allowed to happen from all these gender changes to genetically modified foods to technologies you have no idea of, to cloning and stem cell research and regeneration of people and organs. And there's a lot of Atlantean hubbub that has sort of been in the fog because of the speed of the nano. But now as funds slow down, as people question more, where's this money going? Why is this being spent? Why is this happening? Why is this happening? People can see clearer now. And they will have greater voices, stronger voices. And then the dark side has to come out. And it's not just sexual deviation and human sacrifice and the degradation of other humans. It is about real misuse of resources and the destruction of humanity and humanity's ignorance while this whole thing is occurring. And that ignorance is basically psychic ignorance.
Makes sense.
Yes. And so you will find that the changeover era, especially phase 1 here, is highly boosted to create events that will blast open, in some cases, people's psychic abilities. This means some shocks and traumas. That's usually how the psychic stuff goes bigger and deeper. You follow? Questions?
So then once the processing is done from the nano, then there'll be all this new information coming out.
Well, there will be a lot of new information still. The information is there. It's coming in. The language of light is just, in other words, it's now sending information to help you rebuild. And so the dismantling and the chaos are basically sort of self-destruction of systems that absolutely do not serve their purpose. And you know, there's lots of debates about the welfare state, and you're going to see all manner of cuts in terms of entitled programs. And there's just the amount of money that welfare and Medicare and Social Security take out of the funds coming in is, to use that trite word, it's unsustainable. And so one could say the free ride's over, and you have to return to, well, during the 1800s, there were no cussionary programs. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Right.
It is nice to help society, to give them a little pillow to sleep on. But when society wants to own Bed and Beyond, and everyone wants to have the store, it's too much. Do you understand? And it can't keep going. And the more you give people, the more you encourage them to weaken themselves and to not work. Someone recently said there's something like 1/3 of the people in North America who are permanently unemployed or disabled or out of the ranks of the employed.
With no skills.
And no skills. There's no room for these people. They are going to die off. They will not be able to be replaced. They will not be able replacing their families. You are looking, and we've been saying this for a while, you are looking at a die-off. Will that die-off happen in phase 1? No. It will be a die-off over a period of time. There's potential in this phase 1, 2013, 2017, for a few big planetary evacuations on the death level. We are not talking ETs coming and lifting you up. We are talking about some big events that would take a lot of people out together. Events bigger than what happened in Banda Aceh, which took out 300,000 people or some such. You understand?
Is that this year?
Say it again, please.
Is that this year?
It is potential in phase 1, we will say. Not necessarily this year. And that is important to understand. Some people see it as this year, and some people see some really, really big, what they call plate-shaking events this year. But we'll say that even those probs have been ameliorated. And Karen asked how successful were those global elite in offering that sacrifice and conditioning the space to bring the dark beings in. Well, they were corridored or contained, quarantined into a split. You follow this? And even the probes on bigger stuff have been ameliorated, because we've emphasized to you that while our vehicle was in the underworld, without volunteering for the job, do you understand?
Right.
It was sort of she was taken hostage. There were many, many, many powerful spiritual teachers, thousands of them, who quietly retreated and did all manner of sacred ceremony to hold the space. Many of them fasted. Many of them did things that you will never hear about and they will never write about. It was their sacred way. So, and that energy cannot be discounted. And so because the Illuminats did their blood splatter, and the real illuminated ones did their sacred way, each was so powerful it created a splitting. One could say the Connecticut event symbolized the split. These are ways of looking at things, do you understand?
Yeah.
And what you are in need of is not a new formula. You know, when someone works for a newspaper, it's who, what, why, when, where, and what time, and all this. But on the multidimensional news, it's blossoming. And all of the stories give you other ways of framing what you think happens, expanding and making room for bigger understandings of why events occur and why the media want to manipulate them. So, who has a question or comment?
This is Sue.
Yes, Sue.
To me, it sounds like with all this that's going to be going on, and like the cuts from the government,
Yes.
that people are going to have to band together, and even though they might not be blood family, that they'll have to live like they are a family, and everyone will have to realize that they're going to have to contribute in order to survive.
This is good, Sue. You will see a greater reliability with localities and neighborhoods. Communities will become more self-sufficient, because self-reliant, self-sufficient, more responsible, that will be the name of the game. Yes, people will have to, beyond blood, join forces. There will be lots of cooperation. We do want to emphasize that the new era is a very exciting time. Even though technically it doesn't take off till 2028, you're still in it. It's an exciting time because it is new. It wants to pull on the resources that you have gathered for yourself, all the best that you've garnished to bring with you, and then to reshuffle you and to pool all this together and to make new meetings of people and to bring a new sense of cooperation and respect for all people. You can't argue. You can't fight each other, and you can't want to be right, and you can't, as our vehicle said, act like a pit bull. And that's a personal reference, and you all know what that's referring to. Pit bulls can be nice, but they are not necessarily warm and fuzzy way of creating trust and continuity within a group or a family or a society. Now, all the pit bull owners are going to get mad. It was just a metaphor, because they can bite and hang on. You want to have all cooperation. You want to have respect. And so that's going to be a big sorting out of who to trust and which people do you want. And you've all had some demonstrations and looks at how people can appear to be one way and be another, or people who are losing it and they insist they're not. That's going to be another issue. That people will start to talk whizzy-bangy, act whizzy-bangy, totally be antisocial or out of the cooperative link, and they'll gnaw at it like a hungry dog at a bone, and everyone else will want to move away because the person doesn't even know where they are. And this is the beginning of some big problems. You will also be battling and seeing a greater entity, sort of presence in some, because they don't know who and where and what world to fit in anymore. So some of the confusions that will come out will be people figuring out how to adjust to the new frequencies, which world they're in. Again, those of you who are grounded and clear, and if you can be happy, and if you can be reliable and consistent, then you're only going to build more on that. The guidance will come. You will be very impressed when you look back, even at the end of phase 1, as to how fabulously, wonderfully, superlatively magical the multiverse is. And that would be a wonderful title, but it's a bit long. Do you understand?
Right.
The superlatively, magically wonderful multiverse. There you have it.
Wow, that was good time.
Good.
So this is Sue.
Yes, Sue.
During this time period, well now
The changeover?
the changeover, and even like 2012, if a person, let's use the term died, because they leave their body in that.
So someone who already passed away or will pass away.
Has already passed away, but they did it in even though subconsciously we do create our own leaving of the physical body, correct?
Yes, yes. On some level, there's an agreement.
Okay,
Yes.
on some level there's agreement. And when they leave in an unexpected way, like in a car accident, and so it's possible that they don't know where to go, or they're hanging around. They could even go to their own wake or funeral. And be
Absolutely. There's been many a person who has stood there in the room watching everyone drinking and weeping and wailing and gossiping or saying they got what they deserve, or all the things that happen at a funeral. You understand, a funeral is, the death portal is lethal.
Yeah, you could put it that way.
It is, because the birth portal is not the same. The birth portal is more, it's more orgasmic. Do you follow this? It's more sexual pleasure, kind of. The ultimate of the pleasure comes out as the baby. It doesn't evoke in all the people and the village and the neighborhood the da-da-da-da-da. Even at the death of a young person, not that old, will bring a lot of stuff out. So the death portal really opens things. So yes, someone who left at the end of the nano, that was their agreement, and good time to exit. Of course, whatever time you pick is your time. We do want to remind you that you may have set up a number of exit points in any one lifetime, and you may approach those exit points and decide to change your mind and not even get close, and just as if it didn't exist. Or you might cross over to one of these exit points, perhaps some of you have in your lifetime, where you've become very ill, or oh my gosh, I could have died, or oh, that was a close one, and you come close to them, and maybe you decide, oh, I'm not going there, but you hang out there for a while anyways, and then so there's usually more than one death period that people can face. Although some people know, my exit's 99 and that's it, there's no other possibility, I've got a big life and I'm be very busy. So understand, it's very different for all people. And if you know someone, Sue, that has passed over unexpectedly in an automobile wreck, which we are guessing that you do.
I did not know the person well, but
you know of them.
I know of them.
Then what you can do is, sometimes people go to the place where the wreck was, if it is local, and they put a flower or blessing. You often see that on the side of the road. A crystal can change the energy. And if you can't do that, you can draw it out on a piece of paper if you want to. You just take a piece of paper, put the road, And then if it's two cars, put two squares bumping into each other. If a car hits a tree, put a tree and a car bump into it, so that you make a facsimile of it. You follow this?
Yes.
And then with your facsimile on paper, and sometimes as beginners, it's good to etch it out in paper. Later on, when you get really good, you just call it up as a picture, a mock-up. You're creating again, a mock-up of facsimile. And step in there at the time of the wreck. You understand?
Yes, I do.
And then help the person. And you can picture yourself not even seeing the blood and the mess above the automobile. And then that you are saying, I'm here for you, and you will find that other people will be there too. Because here's what you do. When something happens in the now, and you hear about it a few nows later, you reflect on it many nows later, and then you go back into the past, many of you, to the event to help out. Not even thinking that you are helping the person at the real time when the event is occurring, because in your mind you are thinking about it many nows later. You with us?
Yes.
So that's why healing, to have the caring for it, you can simply be there. And what happens is, because time is simultaneous and the multiverse is non-local, meaning you can be anywhere at any time, you can be with that person and simply help them out. And the more all of you give with your own generosity in this capacity, a few minutes here and there, from articles you hear on the news, you read in the paper, this is how you will start your healing work. And that is what we would like to see all of you aspire to, is to, in some way, to become impeccable healers, the peony healers.
Oh, that's a good one.
Those who can rise to the level of moving energy with compassion, dancing, playing around the multiverse, moving through multidimensional time and space. These are qualities of the new era. They will become evident, they will become the principles, the codicils, they will become the foundation of the new era. But it will take a good 15 years for people to butt heads, wake up, to have paradigms break down, to have the sorting and then the dismantling. And so you can understand what we are describing, yes?
Yes.
There's no magical abracadabra, here it is, the fairy godmothers coming to sing Scalamabula, Witchakatula, Bibbity Bobbity Boo. We are making it up, but we got the Bibbity Bobbity part right. And you've been trained to think, oh, it must happen in an instant. And so just as we said the nano would go by in the blink of an eye, the changeover will be fleeting, but it will be a slow, seductive, enjoyful feast of a fleeting time. How is that?
Good. That's a good
Sounds
design.
good.
Yes.
Good. Did the beeper beep?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Then it is time for us to say adieu.
Yeah.
I do.
And we will see you in the next phase of the early nano with, let's say, great excitement and eager to hear your news stories. So carry on by all means, dear friends. It's been our great pleasure. Good afternoon.